Good morning and good evening, everybody. Hear my voice. Okay. All right. Good morning, everybody. It looks like the audio problem is at the UNESCO. Sounds like all of you are able to hear me. So I think it's easier. I will start the training now because we are already 10 minutes into the session. So good morning, everybody. My name is Johannes Urpelainen. I'm from Finland, but I teach at Johns Hopkins University. I live here in Washington, D.C., in the United States. And it's very early morning here. It's 5 a.m. in the morning, but I'm very pleased to have the opportunity to meet all of you and give you a presentation on this topic of using Zoom and for effective virtual learning. What I'd like to do now is I'm going to start the presentation, and I will give you the brief overview of this topic. It will take us maybe 45 to 50 minutes. And once we are done with the presentation, we will leave some time also for any questions you might have. So based on that, we will be able to hopefully have a good discussion and help everybody get ready for some online learning and virtual education. One technical thing, right now it looks like my connection is quite good. If you have some help you, it is sometimes connection can be also weak on your side, so I cannot control everything, but I can try to slow down and repeat if you're will share the recording with the entire group once we're done here. Okay, so I'm gonna now start with my presentation. So I'll get my PowerPoint here. Okay, are you all able to see my presentation? Okay, perfect. Sounds like you're able to see it. So the goal of my presentation is to give an overview of online learning, and in particular focus on the use of Zoom, which is the technology that we are using today. I am actually myself using Zoom to give online lectures here at Johns Hopkins right now. We have moved into virtual learning about, let's say, 3 weeks ago. And since then, we have been doing all of our teaching online. So I have quite a bit of experience doing this. I've also been a consultant for companies and universities on online learning over the past 2 or 3 years. So hopefully we can have a good session here. The first thing I'd like to do is I'd like to just give you an overview of what we are going to do. So the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give you an overview of online learning itself. So that is not about Zoom, it's about the idea of online learning. Then I will introduce you the basics of Zoom, how to use Zoom. I will tell you a bit about teaching, how to teach effectively in an online environment, how to get students engaged, how to record your videos, and then we will have a Q&A and the concluding remarks if UNESCO is able to fix their technical issues. I would expect, I see Techno asking about the timing. So my expectation is that we will be done with the presentation in about 45 minutes. So by 6 a.m. my time and 6 p.m. Chinese time. And then after that, I will stay online for another 20, 25 minutes, 30 minutes in case people have questions. That's the plan for today. Okay, guys? All right, let's get started here. So let's talk a little bit about online learning in general. The basic idea here is that we are moving lots of the education from the traditional classroom to an online environment. So really the primary difference between online and traditional in-class teaching is that we don't have a physical space where we convene. It's not better or worse. So one of the sort of common misconceptions that people often have about online learning is that it's somehow sort of worse than regular learning, that an online degree, for example, is not as good as an in-class regular degree. But that's not really true anymore. With today's technology, online is different. It's not better, it's not worse. It is a different way to teach, and it does have many benefits, and it has many weaknesses. Now, for online teaching, of course, communication technology is essential. Before online and modern internet and all that, you actually had these so-called correspondence courses, where the idea was that you sent letters between the instructor and the audience. So you could, for example, get a correspondence course in a topic by doing some assignments, reading some materials, and so on. But that's, of course, quite inefficient because it takes a long time to send a letter. Today, we don't need to do that. We can convene in a virtual environment. And the requirements here that you really need for this are you need to have either a computer or a smartphone. And of course, a computer is much better because the phone is not nearly as convenient when it comes to actually doing things like writing, sharing materials, and all that. You also need either an internet connection or a data plan on your phone, right? So you need to have these things. And this, by the way, is a serious consideration. I'm sure that many of you also have students who don't have good technology access, right? So for example, if you have very poor students, they might not be able to afford a good computer. Most people now have some kind of mobile phone, but still in many environments, people don't have the kind of mobile phone that would be able to use Zoom and that you can use to participate in these lectures. So it's very important to keep in mind the so-called digital gap. And when you think of your students, I would encourage you to do a survey or a poll. If you are moving into an online environment, try to understand if the students are facing any difficulty with the technology. So for example, if you have some students who don't have internet connection, is there a way for them to go to a cyber cafe? Or is there a place where they could get a free connection at a library? If somebody doesn't have a computer, could they work together with another student? Otherwise, you are leaving behind the students who are already kind of least advantaged. So I would think this is quite an important issue to address in any kind of online education. Okay, so there's two types of online learning, and I'm going to discuss both of them, though one of them is more relevant for the case of using Zoom. So the first one is called synchronous learning, and this is the idea that you are giving lectures like I am doing right now, but you are doing it in a virtual environment. Okay? And so here really we are mimicking classroom instruction. We are trying to do something that is very similar to what we would do in a classroom, but we do it in an online environment. Okay? And the benefit of this is that it allows interaction. So for example, we are all here at this time. We have a good audience of over 150 instructors here. I'm very glad to see that. You are able to ask questions while I do this. You can use the chat window and we can have a Q&A discussion afterwards. So some kind of interaction is possible. The challenge, though, is that it lacks temporal flexibility. So suppose, for example, that we had a class with this group. Now, this would be very convenient for some of you, because if you happen to be in, let's say, Africa or South Asia, Sri Lanka, for example, India, Nigeria, now would be in the middle of the day. So this would be a very nice time for you to have this lecture. For me, I had to get up at 4 a.m. in the morning to instruct you. I'm happy to do it for this distinguished audience, but I would not want to do that every week for all of my classes. So that's why the synchronous learning has some weaknesses. Another one might be, what if I want to get an education, but I'm working? I have a job, I'm an engineer, I'm a car mechanic. Any kind of job that I have, it might be difficult for me to attend a class, but it would not be difficult for me to watch a recording. It would not be difficult for me to do assignments. I'm a hard worker, so I would be happy to do this kind of work in the evening. So in that case, we could use another type of online learning, which is called asynchronous learning. And here the idea is that I, as an instructor, I prepare materials for you and I manage the course, but I do not necessarily do it at the same time as you are learning. So this is quite different from classroom instruction. The challenge is interaction can be a bit limited. Of course, it's nicer to interact with somebody in real time when you're talking, but the benefit is flexibility. I can accommodate students on their own schedule. I can accommodate students who are not in the same time zone. All these things are more possible. And even if you do it like this, you can still have virtual office hours. So for example, we are launching a new degree, online degree called Master of Arts in Sustainable Energy, or MACE. And most of this is asynchronous. So I prepare materials, students study, we use discussion board, we use these kinds of things. But once a week, I have 1 hour of office hour. And during that office hour, students are able to join and come and ask questions if they are interested. So that way we can have some kind of interaction and connection between the students and the faculty. And I see here from Honey, we could combine both in flipped classrooms. Yes. So flipped classroom is an example of a kind of a blend where you combine, you have some videos that the students watch, but you still have this joint interaction. And you can do that online. Students can watch some videos, materials in advance. The class, you can have a discussion using Zoom. And yes, like Honey is doing, please, if you have any comment or question during the presentation, don't hesitate to use the chat window. It's very convenient for me to keep an eye on it, and I can respond to questions if they come. So please don't feel shy to use that model. Okay, so let me now talk a bit about the Zoom. This is the technology we are using. And of course, it's very nice that we are able to have today's lecture using Zoom itself, because that means you're already gaining some experience. You are learning how this environment works. And there's a technology that works for a virtual meeting room. Basically, we can think of this as a technology that provides a meeting room with some functions that we can use. That allows us then to have this virtual replication of the classroom experience. David in the chat notes that you can have tea, in my case, Ethiopian coffee, while we are doing the Zoom. So it's kind of convenient also. It's nice to be able to do this from my home instead of lecturing at 4 a.m. In a classroom. The benefits of Zoom are that it's very flexible. So you will see that there's a lot of functions. It's nice, and I think it works overall quite well. Sometimes you can have technical difficulties. Like, for example, we had this issues with the UNESCO connection, but this is of course just reality with the connection, and hopefully right now for most of you this is working. I see somebody's requesting me move into the full presentation mode. Let me see if I can make that work. It's a little bit challenging because I need to also keep not on my note, but let me give it. Yes, okay, I was able to do it. Okay, and Irisha is asking about the cost for students. So the one thing I would note here is that yes, there is a cost in the sense that the student and the instructor and the university, they need to have internet connection, or they need to have a phone connection with data, right? But Zoom itself doesn't add any cost to the students. So when you have a Zoom, there's a free version which you can use, but at the same time, there's also a pro version which you can use with improved technologies. So this is something that you can use in the to improve the experience. So, for example, the Zoom that I have, the university has bought it, and it has some additional functions. I will discuss them. Okay. The students just need to install the app either on the computer or on the phone, and then they join with a link. Similarly, you joined this by clicking on a link and joining us. Similarly, the students are able to join just by clicking that link. You can also use a password. So we've heard of this sort of issue where sometimes people join meetings they're not supposed to join. Somebody could just type in the meeting link, and then they could come in and start harassing other people, right? So you can try to avoid that by setting a password for your meeting. We didn't do it for this one to keep it easy, but this is possible. Mona, you are raising an important point about the free version of Zoom. So this is one of the things I was going to discuss, is that one person should have the pro account. So the person who is hosting the meeting should have the pro account so they can have unlimited time. If you're hosting a meeting with the free version, then it will cut you off after 40 minutes. But that's why the best model would be that the university would purchase the Zoom account, and it would be free for the students. And of course, also for the professor. You should not use your own money to do this. I also see a very interesting comment from Michael on going to a cafe. So yes, of course, right now, with the coronavirus crisis, it's very difficult because most countries are in this lockdown mode. We are not supposed to go outside. So this could be a really big challenge for many students. And again, in those cases, we would need to make some alternative arrangements to help the students with the instruction. Okay. There's a few different optional features that Zoom offers to improve and those include, for example, so-called breakout rooms. So breakout rooms means that you can split the group of students into 2 or more smaller groups. Suppose that you want to have a group assignment where the students form groups of 4 people. You can then use Zoom to do. I'm not able to demonstrate it today because we don't have the right kind of Zoom, and it's not using my account, but it's possible to use this for this small group teaching that Mona is raising. So you can have them participate in breakout rooms, they're called. You can record the session if you have the pro account. So this session is, for example, being recorded, and I assume that UNESCO will provide access to that. If you have a very large group, you can also use the webinar function. So right now we are using the regular discussion mode. And in the regular discussion mode, there's a limit. I think it's something like 300 or 500 participants. But in the webinar, you can have many more. So we, for example, have had webinars where we have 3,000 people participate, right? So if you have 3,000 people, it's a very different experience from having 100 or 20 students. But if you have a really big lecture, let's say for all of the students at the university, this can also be done using Zoom. Okay. And Richard is asking an important question on the cafes. So if the student goes to the cafe and uses Zoom, they don't need a license. It's only the person who is hosting the session. So for example, usually it would be the university or the professor that should have the pro account if you decide to use Zoom. Okay. Okay. Now, what I'd like to do next is I'd like to show you a little video. So let's first test that it works. Are you able to see this?
Hello, everyone. This is Johannes Urp.
Okay. Can you all see the video? Okay, good. So this is a video that I created with a company called YX in China. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just show you this little video. It takes about 4 minutes. It's kind of a demonstration of what teaching on Zoom actually looks like. Okay, so I'm gonna switch my video off to save some bandwidth, and I'll show you this video. So please watch the video, and we'll continue right after that.
I'm a professor at the Johns Hopkins School of Advanced Studies. I'm an instructor with YX, a Beijing-based online education company. Today I'm going to show you how you can use Zoom to conduct high-quality online education. This is the technology that we use when we teach online workshops with VX. And I am here with a few people from the VX team in Beijing. So what I'd like to now do is just ask everybody to introduce yourselves.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ada. I'm the first-year student in linguistics. And I'm really happy to have this opportunity to study and discuss the topics in international relationships with you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Benny?
Yes, hello. My name is Bendy. I'm a PhD student in the international relationships. And I hope I can learn something great from Professor. Yeah, thank you so much.
All right, thank you for joining. Icy?
Hello, everyone. This is Icy, and I'm my second year studying computer science, and I'm going to choose another.
I'd like to I'd like to join this meeting, and I'd like to learn more about the international relationships, the topic, and I would like to learn more. And I'm so happy to join this meeting. Yeah.
Wonderful. So as you can all see, this is quite straightforward. The instructor and the students can speak. I also have the option of muting the students if somebody is giving me trouble. Not that that ever happens, but that is always possible. We can also, using Zoom, we can also do presentations. So as I'm doing this, I'm just clicking share here. I'm asking it to pick my PowerPoint. And when I do that, the system switches. You all should now see the PowerPoint. Can you see it? Yes, wonderful. Okay. So what you have here is you see the PowerPoint, and you would do the presentation as if you were doing a regular presentation. You can switch slides. You can talk as you do it. You still have a view of the students as well, and you can have a discussion during the presentation. And if I now want to go back to the gallery mode where I only see the students and let's say start a discussion, then I'll just click stop share and I'm back there. Okay. So that's what I just did. I can also use a chat function. So if I want to send, for example, a link to the students, I can do that by just using a chat window as you would do in any kind of typical online chat room and so on. So I think overall Zoom is quite a versatile technology. It's very nice and works well for this kind of online teaching. So I would strongly encourage any of you viewers who are in the instructional business to give it a try. And of course, if you're interested in working with us at VX, please get in touch and we can take it from there. Thank you to all of you students for taking the time to help me with this little demonstration. And I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.
Okay, so that was a brief show. I just wanted to show what it really looks like when you're actually doing it. Now we'll get back to our regular programming. So if you give me just 1 second to get back. Here we go. Okay, so there's a few things I'd like to sort of now just next do is I'd like to talk a bit about some key kind of good practices that you can use to make your teaching more effective and enjoyable. So one of them is definitely this idea of muting the participants. So if you are the host, you can unmute and mute participants. And this is very important because people always have a little bit of background noise, right? So maybe there is somebody's honking on the street outside, maybe somebody else is talking there. So in all of those cases, you want to mute the participants so that you have 200 people in the room, it would be a lot of noise. I think it's also important to let the students decide if they want to switch the video on and off. Okay, so especially if you're recording the video, I think it's very useful to sort of let the students decide if they want to have the video on or off. People might have some privacy concerns, and in those cases, it's fair to let students make their own decisions. Okay, so there's no. I think it's usually you try to be very friendly to the students and help them, and that is very important. Now, the next point I want to make is on the chat window. So the chat window is very powerful. As you can see, many of you are already asking questions and discussing while I'm talking. This is something that would not be possible without the chat window. So I am a very big fan of the chat window. I think it's a very powerful tool that we can use. And for example, I'm getting some questions. So Vajax is a company. It's a company with whom I work. It's not a specific technology or anything. You don't need to worry about that. You just need Zoom, okay? There's another, Sarah is asking privately about students sharing their screens. Yes, that is possible. So anybody can share the screen with the free Zoom. The host just needs to give them the right to share the screen, okay? So that is certainly possible. Every student, for example, each student can do a presentation in the class, right? So for example, you could have each of the students present their research or their project to the rest of the class. And I do that quite often in my classes using Zoom, okay? You should always monitor connectivity, right? So for example, when I am talking to you, I'm always keeping an eye on what's happening in your video screens. And so for example, if I see that all of your video screens are freezing at the same time, that would suggest that there's a connection problem on my side. And in that case, it would make sense. It's my problem, and it makes sense for me to stop and wait until my connection improves. But right now, for example, I see Anthony and Adam moving. So from that, I can infer that my connection is fine, right? And so I can just keep waiting, and I can keep talking, and that's a good thing to do. I have getting a few important questions here. So Olawale is asking about other technologies. So yes, there are other. There's Microsoft Teams, there's Google Hangouts, there's YouTube Webinar. There are many other technologies. I am simply just demonstrating Zoom here. That's what I use mostly, but there are many other technologies as well that you can use. There's a few other questions I'd like to answer as we're getting now. So Azam is asking about how many people can be visible. Everybody can have the video on at the same time, but the maximum number of screens you can see, I think, is something like 25. And then you can move between the different groups of students for that. Okay. Mohammed is asking about checking connectivity if the students don't have videos on. Well, that is a problem. If nobody has any video on, then it's harder. But Zoom does tell you if your connection is very bad, it sends you a message, actually says your connection is bad. So then you know that you need to stop and try again, okay? Paul is asking about the number of students. And so my experience is that with the regular Zoom, you can easily have up to 500. If not that, then in that case, you do need to move to the webinar. So if you want to have more than 500 students, you should use the webinar function. Unfortunately, it again costs. Zoom is a private company, so they are in this business to make money. So it would be a little more expensive in that case. Yes, so maximum number of students is, depending on the version, is 100 or 500. We have a 500 version, and webinar can be up to 10,000 students. Webinar is very good in that sense. Okay. The last point I wanted to make here is on the the so-called Zoom bombing. Okay. You may have seen before the concept of photo bombing. This is the idea that somebody is taking a picture, and then somebody else kind of comes to the picture and does some stupid thing, like, right? So this is photo bombing. Zoom bombing is the same thing, but on Zoom. So for example, somebody could join our session, even though they're not any professor, they're not at a university, and they would want to come and kind of harass us. Why they do it, I don't know. They're not nice people. but they could come here and start, for example, posting kind of inappropriate language using like swear words and things like this on the chat window. So this is Zoom bombing. The way you can avoid this is by setting a password. That's one easy technology, and you can keep the link private. So you don't want to give the link to everybody, for example. So this is this is a security issue that Zoom is aware of and is working on. Now, there's a few more questions in the chat that I'd like to take now. So Tushani is asking about webinar. So webinar has the same functions as Zoom, but it has actually more. So it, for example, has a specific Q&A function. So it actually is better than regular Zoom. One of the interesting points that we are getting here is that is the issue of what kind of computers you can use. Almost any computer, Mac, PC, can use Zoom, but you just need to have either a smartphone or a computer with the internet connection. The sort of last point I want to make is somebody is raising in the chat a very important point about the waiting room. So for example, suppose that you want to have a session that starts at a certain time, like let's say you have a class at 10 a.m. in the morning. If some students come earlier, then at that time you can make them go into a waiting room. That's again another thing that you can do if you use if you are the host. You can set up a waiting room where they cannot get to the room before you let them in. And that can also help you prevent the Zoom bombing, because if somebody joins, then you can check who they are before you let them in. Like in a regular class, if they're not in the class, you can throw them out. Okay. People are asking some very good questions. So one of them is on whiteboard. So, well, whiteboard is possible, but of course you would need to have a screen that allows you to do this. Or you can just have a whiteboard at home and write on it using your video, right? That's another portion. Okay. So it really depends on the technology that you have. People are also asking about security. So it's always a challenge with this kind of online thing, and that's why I would encourage, if it's a class, some kind of sensitive topic or issue, I would strongly encourage you to be very careful with any recording or something. And if it's a very, very sensitive thing where students may have to express some political opinion, maybe it's better not to record at all, because you want to avoid any kind of problems with this. So we just have to be realistic. I think Zoom is facing some challenges. They're still working on these things, but hopefully over time it becomes safer and better. I think I'm very comfortable using it already now for any kind of normal class. If it was a class on some sensitive topic, I would switch off the recording. And you can also ask the students to not use their own name, right? So instead of checking in, most of you have done, you can ask them to make up a name. So for example, you could use colors. One student is blue, another one is yellow, the third one is red. And then if you switch off the video, nobody can know who these people are, right? And you can also ask for consent. You can say if students don't want to be recorded, tell them to use a fake name, an alias, and tell them to switch off the video. So that way nobody can recognize them, okay? So this kind of basic privacy and ethical is good. People are asking about Microsoft Teams. I am not able to, I haven't used Microsoft Teams. So for that, maybe UNESCO can organize another training, but I'm not experienced with that thing. For the link, so the way the link works is that when you set up a Zoom account, you can create so-called virtual rooms. So you would use this online using the Zoom website, and it will give you then the link which you can share with anybody. Okay. Okay. Badmos is coming up with an interesting idea. Perhaps we can have a step-by-step procedure for putting our students in Zoom and interact with them. I think that would actually be a very good idea. We cannot do it in today's lecture, because to do that we would need to redesign this lecture a little differently. But for UNESCO, I would encourage maybe you would be able to do that kind of a training as well. Okay. So I'm just looking at the time. I think we are on track. Okay. So next, I'd like to just talk screen sharing. We've already seen in the React one. So I think we can skip this one. Okay. I want to talk a bit about outside Zoom, how to do online learning, like how to share materials. So one of the things that you do need to have is you need to have some kind of a way to share materials with the students, because you cannot do that in the classroom. You could have an email list. You could have a Dropbox folder. I don't know, have you people used the Dropbox before? It's a file sharing system. Let me give the link. For those of you who might not be familiar, let me see if I can give you the link. Just give me 1 second. I'm coming back to the presentation. Just a second. So this is a link of a technology called Dropbox. Google Drive is another good option. So you can use Google Drive as well. And on top of that, okay, let me just see, can I get this presentation back? Yes, there we go. So you can also use the, you can use Google Drive, you can use Blackboard, it's a learning technology. Canvas is another learning technology. Your university might have a system that you can use. I use Blackboard, that's what we use at our university, and I also use Dropbox with it, okay? Now, you may want to think a bit about like, okay, how would you like to use your time most effectively? And I think one way you can think of it is, what are the things where you need interaction? What are the things that can be prepared in advance? So recording videos, if you have the data bandwidth, you're able to upload videos, let the students watch them in advance. That way you can save time for discussion in the class. So that's one important thing. You can share links. So when you are, you can share links, ask people to go to websites, explore databases, things like this. There's a lot of things that you can do to make this work well with the students. Video recording is very easy. Today, almost every computer comes with the free and basic recording software. The only issue is that the files can be big. So you need to be able to share them using some kind of a cloud. Dropbox, you have 2 gigabytes of data, for example, but most computers do have free recording studios. So for example, a Mac has PCs would have something similar if you have Windows, for example. Other things you can share reading, you can share websites, you can share databases. There's a lot of things you can do. Just do check the copyright that you are allowed. Most companies and so on, they allow you to use their materials for free for university education. They only charge if you use a private business. So, but you do want to check this. I think it's very important to check this. And so let me now show you, just do a brief demonstration of how. Okay, so I'm gonna switch off the presentation for a second again. And instead, I'm gonna share my screen with you. So when you do Zoom, you can share different things. I'm now gonna share my screen. There is a whiteboard function here. Let me show you that real quick. So this is whiteboard. This kind of function is available, right? You can see what I'm doing here, right? I'm drawing something. I think it's not very convenient without the touch screen, because like drawing like this is not easy. It would be much better to have something else. But if you have a touch screen, like a Surface, Microsoft Surface, very powerful. Okay. Quick on that. But what I really want to do is I want to show the Dropbox thing. So I'm going to just share my desktop. Now what I'm doing is I'm actually sharing what you see, right? So some of you actually see yourself on the screen now, right? Because I'm sharing the full screen. And then now for Dropbox, here are my notes. It's my outline of the lecture, which I shared with UNESCO earlier. Let's put that for now. So let's say I want to share with you a link. And so I want to share my slides with you, for example. I would go here. This is my slides, Zoom lecture slides.pptx. I would open and I say copy Dropbox link, like this. And then I would just go back to the chat window and I would share the link with you. And now you should be able to download it. If you are in a country that has internet restrictions like China, you might need to have a VPN, the virtual a private network. But if you're not, you should be able to download my slides using this link. So this is how you can share files with your students in virtual education using Blackboard or even just a simple Dropbox folder. Okay. Okay. So so that was a quick demonstration. Back to the presentation now. Okay. One thing very important: when you do online teaching, try to be like natural and relaxed. There's no need to study in advance and come up with a script or anything like that. We are not producing videos for Hollywood, or we are not producing a movie here, right? You can see I'm not reading from any kind of script. I'm just talking to you as I go through the presentation. So I don't think it's necessary to do like very complicated editing. You don't need to do video editing. If you can do that, it's great, but you don't have to do it. Don't spend time trying to learn how to do video editing. It's not worth it. Just do the regular presentation, try to make it as normal and interactive as you can, and that should really be the best way to do the teaching. Okay, some of you have already asked about exams. So this is an important topic that I do want to cover. So how to do exams. There is a few different things that can be done, which is one is a virtual exam. So in principle, you could have an exam the same way as you have normally. Just have the students come to a classroom and do the exam. But it's a bit challenging because if there's some problem with the video connection, how do you know if the students are actually doing the work? Are they cheating? Maybe they have difficulty following your instructions. So my preferred option would actually be to let the students take a take-home exam. Are you familiar with this concept of a take-home exam? So in the take-home exam, you give the students an exam like you would do normally, and you tell them, take this exam home, and you have 1 day to do it. You can use any kind of exam material. So you can use open book. It's so-called open book exam. Mona is pointing out that's correct. So, and you say you have 24 hours, and then you have to send it back to me. And of course, you have to trust your students. You have to somehow make sure that they don't cheat. So hopefully you are going to have a good culture and people are honest. But you can give them a different kind of exam. Ume is asking why 24 hours. It's just one example. It could be 12 hours, it could be 6 hours, it could be 48 hours, really depending on what's convenient for you and what is best for that. So the duration is like Charanji Med is saying, it depends on your own preference. Okay? But I'm, for example, in my case, I'm now teaching an online class that I taught in a regular version last year. So what I'm doing is I'm turning my regular exam into a take-home exam. Okay? And generally speaking, for the assignments, email, Blackboard, Canvas, Dropbox, Google Drive, there are many ways to do this sharing. So that is really not very difficult. Okay. Mona is asking about MCQs and EMQs. Can you just briefly tell me what these acronyms MCQ and EMQ mean? Oh, okay, multiple choice. So if you want to do a multiple choice question, then for that, it's usually best to use some kind of a function. Like Blackboard, for example, allows you to do both multiple choice and extended matching. So you can create a module. Again, I'm not going to show how to do it here because we only have 1 hour, so I cannot do everything. But if you have some kind of a teaching platform, you can use that to create multiple choice. And it will automatically do the grading and everything. And yes, Mona, you can do it on Google Forms as well. Google Forms allows you to do things where people check different options, and you can check which ones are correct and which ones are not wrong. So you can also do that. Okay. One thing that is very important is how to engage students. And we are kind of seeing it happening right now. So one of the challenges with any kind of lecturing is that it's all about the teacher and not about the students. And then the challenge is how do you get like interaction? Interaction is really important for learning we know that people learn best when they are engaged. So there's a few things that we can do to make this a little more effective. One of them is a lot of structure. So you see, for example, when I've been talking with you, I've always given you orientation. Next, we're going to do this. Now we're going to do that. This is very important. Try to give a lot of orientation so that the students can follow you. Okay, this is one very important thing. Another thing that is very important is ask the students for questions and comments. So you can see how, like, when I started talking to you, initially nobody did anything, but now we have a very vibrant and active chat discussion going while I talk. That's great, right? And that's why I'm trying to answer the chat questions when I have an opportunity, because it helps you stay engaged, and that way you learn more from this discussion. So this is important. Try to keep it interesting. One of the problems we face is students could be doing other things. They could have Facebook on, right? They could be watching some other video. They could be chatting with their friends, and you would not know. So try to keep them active. Try to keep them participating, and try to take it easy. Make sure that people follow. If they lose track, slow down, go easy, help people, because virtual learning is a bit more challenging than regular learning. At least for me, I need a break. It's a little tiring to do all this learning. And in fact, one of the things that we do face here is when I'm teaching online, I need to keep an eye on my connection. I need to keep an eye on my slides. I need to talk, and I need to keep an eye on the chat window. So there's a lot to follow. It can be done, but you have to be careful and you have to pay attention to these different things. Okay. So with that, let's now just again go back to a few points about the connectivity. I've already discussed a little bit, but you do need to keep always in mind that connectivity is always going to be an issue here. So you need to keep track of your connection. If you see freezing or garbled audio from somebody, that can help here. You can keep an eye on these messages that your internet connection is unstable. I don't know if anybody's getting this message, but it's possible sometimes that you get this unstable connection. And in that case, that means you need to stop and you need to repeat what you just said, because that way you can avoid these issues. So it's function. Just patient. This is life. We don't have perfect connection yet. We have very good internet now, but not perfect. Depends on the country, depends on your internet plan and everything. Okay. One important question that Uma is raising that I'd like to address is how can we have the students participate when the video is off? Well, we see it already happening. Not all of you have the video on, but you are participating on the chat. So the chat is a very good way to participate. It really helps students participate. And I've seen, for example, one case in my classes, when I moved into online, many students actually started participating more because they can use the chat instead of trying to talk in person. If they're a little shy, if they feel like they don't want to speak in front of the class, maybe they have a stuttering problem or some other speaking problem, they can still use the chat. So I think that's really quite important and helpful is using the chat window. Okay. The final topic I want to deal with is reducing stress. So one thing that we need to keep in mind when we do this teaching is, especially right now, it's a very difficult time for many people because of the coronavirus crisis. So I think what we can do here is, first of all, try to make things as simple as possible. Don't make big changes. Don't try to design the perfect class. Instead, try to design a class that is like your previous class, but is done online. Minimal change is always a good idea. If you can reduce assignments, that is also good. So for example, I have fewer problem sets now online than I had in my previous class. And that's because I am thinking that the students are probably facing many challenges at this time. They might be worried about their health. They might have lost their job. So for these reasons, I try to reduce the assignments and make it a bit easier for students to do the work. I'm very flexible with deadlines right now. I'm try to be very friendly. If students need extension, usually in the past I ask like, okay, why do you need an extension? Do you have a valid reason? Now I just tell them, no problem, you get extra 3 days. Because it's a difficult time. You don't want to add to people's stress when we are in a public health crisis in any case. Always have something to drink. Coffee is maybe not the best, because water is generally much better. But because it's early morning, I do need my Ethiopian. This is very essential. I'm a big coffee drinker. Finns drink more coffee than any other country in the world per capita. So my country is the #1 coffee drinking country in the world, and I'm a good example of that. Try to take some breaks. I think that's important here, is that you need to take some break every now and then, because it's really is more exhausting than normal teaching. Okay. I do need to now go back to the chat. There's a very good discussion going on there. So Richard is raising a very important point that multitasking is challenging. And Richard, in fact, this is actually exactly the right thing to do. So what you would do as an instructor, you go through your slide without worrying about the chat. When you're done with the slide, you go to the chat for some little time, respond questions. Then you move to the next slide. That way you can do one task, and it's much less stressful than keeping an eye on the chat all the time. Okay. It also helps the students because they know when they should focus on the lecture and when they should focus on the chat. Final point, pass-fail. So it often makes sense in this context to give grades based on pass-fail instead of giving actual grades. Again, just to make life easier. This is something that your university, I think, needs to decide. But we have, for example, at Johns Hopkins, any student can now choose pass-fail instead of regular grade if they want. It's a university decision. Okay. Okay. On the recordings, just very briefly, the only thing I'll say about this, if you have the Pro account, you can easily set this on the Zoom website, if you want to record your sessions. You can share the link with the students after, and the benefit here, of course, is that the students are able to join this. Okay, I'm hearing now some background noise, so let me do one thing. Just mute everybody again, because I want to make sure that, can I all? So I was just muting everybody because I wanted to make sure that. Why am I not able to? Still getting some background noise. Okay, so I'm muting everybody again. Please don't unmute yourself because I'm getting some background noise here from somebody, and that is making, I think, the experience a bit worse for everyone. Really don't know why this is happening because I'm trying to mute everybody. Okay, there it is. Oh, I'm not able to find mine. Oh, okay. Now, let's read the presentation. Let me get back to the sharing. Sorry, you can see this is not perfect. Sometimes we do face some challenges here. I'm going back to this. Okay. In terms of the recording, you do own the recording yourself. It's not like Zoom doesn't own the recording, but just be careful again with the privacy issue. Make sure that the students consent to the recording and that they understand how this works. Because if it's a sensitive topic, there could be some issues there. Okay, now that's my presentation. I think we finished on time. So thank you everybody for following the presentation. I really appreciate your interest and hope that this was at least somewhat helpful.